Imagine this. The love of your life walks back into your world after 10 long years. The feelings are still there, burning just as bright, but so are the secrets that tore you apart. What really happened the night Michael died? And when lies finally shatter, is love strong enough to survive the ruins? Tonight, I'll take you into a story of passion, betrayal, and truths too heavy to bear. Before we continue, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe for more stories like this. The church bells tolled slowly, their echoes carrying through the sleepy seaside town. Mary Jones stood stiffly outside St. Matthew's Church, her black dress clinging to her skin in the late summer humidity. She hadn't been home in 10 years, and every corner of the town felt like a ghost pressing in on her. She could still see it, herself as a 17-year-old girl running down the very steps she now stood on, David Brown calling her name behind her, his voice breaking with panic. That was the last time she saw him. And now here she was again, burying her father. Her hands tightened around the funeral program, smudging the ink of in loving memory, Thomas Jones. Mary! The voice sent a shiver down her spine. She turned. David Brown stood in the church doorway, taller than she remembered, his black suit fitting too perfectly, his face older, sharper, but his eyes, those same stormy grey eyes, locked onto hers with something between shock and longing. David, Mary whispered. Her mouth was dry, her throat tight. For a moment, the church steps were no longer there, the mourners blurred around her, and it was just the two of them, just like before. You came back, he said. His voice was deeper now, rougher. Mary swallowed. For my father. A silence stretched between them. The kind of silence filled with words unsaid, apologies never spoken, questions that had festered for years. Finally, David nodded once, as though forcing himself to look away. I should, inside. She watched him turn, and her chest ached with an old, familiar pain. The funeral passed in a haze. Mary sat in the front row, her head bowed, but her eyes kept drifting sideways to where David stood with the rest of the Brown family. His father, Richard Brown, sat stone-faced beside him, his reputation still casting a long shadow in the town. Everyone respected Richard. Everyone feared him. When the last hymn ended and the mourners began to filter out, Mary stayed behind. She needed a moment alone. But when she finally stepped outside, the sky was dim with early evening light, and there he was again, David, standing by the old oak tree near the cemetery gates. They faced each other, neither speaking at first. You look the same, David said finally, though it was a lie. She looked different, older, worn, her once bright smile gone. Mary gave a faint, humorless laugh. That's not true. David's eyes softened, just for a moment, before he quickly looked away. I'm sorry about your father. He was good to me when we were kids. Mary felt her throat close. She wanted to say something simple like thank you, but instead what came out was, I didn't expect to see you here. It's my town too, Mary, David said quietly. I never left. And there it was. The truth hung in the air, heavy and unspoken. She left. She ran. She broke him. Why are you talking to me? Mary asked suddenly, sharper than she intended. David's jaw tightened. Because it's been 10 years. And because I thought maybe, he stopped himself, shaking his head. Never mind. Maybe what? She pressed. His eyes met hers then, burning. Maybe you'd finally tell me why you disappeared. Her breath caught, her lips parting. She wanted to say everything, to scream it all out. But the memory of her father's voice stopped her, the warnings, the fear. I can't, she whispered. His face hardened. Then nothing's changed. And with that, he turned and walked away, leaving her standing alone among the gravestones. That night, Mary sorted through her father's study. The house smelled the same, old wood, salt from the sea air, faint tobacco from his pipes. She'd left everything untouched for a decade, and dust clung to the shelves, the faded curtains, the desk where her father used to sit. She opened drawers one by one, searching for documents, bills, anything that needed handling. In the bottom drawer, beneath old photographs and yellowed papers, she found it. A sealed envelope with her name written in her father's neat handwriting. The date. 10 years ago. Her chest tightened. Hands trembling, she tore it open. The words inside were short, but they split her world in half. Mary, if you love David, you must leave him. The Browns carry secrets that will ruin you. Trust me. Trust no one. Do not come back. Dad. The letter slipped from her fingers, landing on the floor. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. And suddenly, she understood why she'd been so afraid that night. Why she'd run. But the secret still wasn't clear. And now, after 10 years, she would have to face it. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the thin curtains of her childhood bedroom. Mary hadn't slept. Her father's letter sat on the nightstand, the words burned into her mind. She clutched it once more, reading it over and over, but it gave no answers, only warnings. Her heart was heavy, her mind buzzing. She had left everything, David, her friends, her life, because of her father's voice in her ear that night. You have to go, Mary. Don't ask why. Just go. And she had obeyed. Without a goodbye, without explanation. But now, face to face with David again, her chest ached with guilt. Downstairs, the house was quiet. Too quiet. She made herself tea, but even the sound of the kettle whistling felt intrusive in the silence. A knock at the door startled her. When she opened it, she froze. Susan Baker stood there. Mary's old best friend. Susan looked polished, her blonde hair swept into a neat bun, a fitted dress that screamed success. But her smile was tight, forced. Mary, Susan said smoothly. I heard you were back. I thought I should come by. Mary hesitated, then stepped aside. Susan. It's been a long time. Susan walked in, her heels clicking against the floor. She looked around the house with polite curiosity, but there was something sharp in her gaze. I was sorry to hear about your father, Susan said, her tone formal. He was a good man. Thank you, Mary replied, still stiff. They sat at the kitchen table, a strange air between them. So, Susan said, sipping the tea Mary poured, you've seen David, I suppose. Mary's fingers tightened around her cup. Yes. Susan smiled faintly, but her eyes were cold. Well, you should know, we're engaged. The words hit Mary like a punch. Her stomach dropped, though she forced herself to keep her face calm. Congratulations, she managed. Susan tilted her head, watching her closely. You're not surprised. Mary gave a small, bitter smile. I left, Susan. Of course he moved on. Susan leaned forward slightly, lowering her voice. Did he tell you about his brother? Mary froze. What about him? Susan's smile widened, almost triumphant. Oh, so he didn't. Mary's heart pounded. Susan, what are you talking about? Susan leaned back, swirling her tea casually. Let's just say, the Browns aren't as perfect as they want the world to believe. If you knew the truth, you'd never look at David the same way again. Her words were slow, deliberate, dripping with suggestion. Mary's throat went dry. She wanted to demand answers, to shake Susan until she spoke plainly. But something about Susan's smirk told her that was the point. She wanted Mary rattled, off balance. Why are you telling me this? Mary asked quietly. Susan's eyes gleamed. Because you always thought he was yours. But you were 10 years too late. The silence between them thickened. Finally, Susan stood, smoothing her dress. I should go. David doesn't know I came here. Let's keep it that way. She walked to the door, pausing with her hand on the handle. Goodbye, Mary. Be careful digging into the past. Some truths don't want to be found. And with that, she left, the door clicking shut behind her. Mary stood frozen in the kitchen, her pulse racing, her father's letter echoing in her mind, and Susan's words adding new weight to the mystery. If you knew the truth, you'd never look at him the same. Her hands shook as she pressed them against the table. What had David done? And what was it her father had been so desperate to protect her from? The questions spun in her mind, louder and louder. The past wasn't just coming back. It was about to unravel her. The following afternoon, Mary decided to walk into town. It was strange, retracing streets that once felt like home. The bakery where she and Susan used to buy muffins after school was still there, the smell of fresh bread spilling out. The small bookstore, though faded and chipped, still displayed paperbacks in its dusty windows. People glanced at her as she passed. Some offered polite nods, others looked away quickly. She could almost hear their whispers, "She's back." After 10 years. After the way she left. Mary kept her head high, but every step pressed heavier on her chest. She stopped at the little cafe near the harbor, the one she and David used to haunt after school. Without thinking, she slipped inside, craving the familiarity of it. The bell above the door chimed. Her heart skipped. David was there, sitting at a table near the window, a cup of coffee in his hands, his gaze fixed on the sea outside. Mary froze. Part of her wanted to turn around and flee, but his eyes lifted at the sound of the bell. Their gazes locked. He set his cup down slowly. "Mary." Her voice caught in her throat. I didn't know you'd be here." A shadow of a smile tugged at his lips, humorless. "It's a small town. You'll be seeing me everywhere." Mary hesitated, then stepped closer. "Can I sit?" He studied her for a long moment before giving a short nod. She slid into the chair opposite him, her pulse loud in her ears. "I didn't think you'd actually come back," David said after a pause. "I didn't think I would either," Mary admitted softly. "But my father," her throat tightened. "I had to." David's eyes softened, just a little. "I'm sorry about him." "Thank you," she whispered. The silence stretched between them, heavy with what they weren't saying. Finally, David leaned back. "Susan told me she saw you." Mary tensed. "Yes. She came to the house." A muscle in his jaw ticked. She shouldn't have done that. Mary tilted her head. "Why? She's your fiancée." David flinched almost imperceptibly. "Yes," he said finally. Something sharp twisted in Mary's chest. "You don't sound very sure." His eyes met hers then, stormy and unreadable. "You left, Mary, without a word. What did you expect me to do? Wait forever?" The words hit her like a slap. She opened her mouth, but no defense came. He was right. She had left. "I'm sorry," she whispered. David's hand curled around his coffee cup, knuckles white. "Sorry doesn't change 10 years." Her throat burned, her chest tight. She wanted to explain, to tell him about her father's warnings, the letter, the fear that had gnawed at her. But the words stuck like thorns. David leaned forward suddenly, his voice low. "Why did you leave me, Mary? I need to hear you say it. After all this time, why?" Mary's lips parted, but only silence came. His eyes searched hers, desperate, furious. When she didn't answer, he let out a bitter laugh and leaned back. "Exactly," he muttered. Her heart ached. "David." The bell above the door jingled again. Mary turned, and froze. Susan walked in. Her polished smile faltered for just a moment when she saw them sitting together, then snapped back into place. "Well," Susan said lightly, walking over. "Isn't this cozy?" David stiffened. "Susan." Susan leaned down, pressing a kiss to his cheek with practiced ease. "I was just running errands. Didn't expect to find you here." Her eyes flicked to Mary, sharp and calculating. Mary forced a smile. "Hello, Susan." "Mary," Susan said sweetly. "I hope you're settling back in." Mary nodded. "Trying to." Susan slipped into the seat beside David, her hand resting possessively on his arm. It must be strange, after so long. Yes, Mary agreed quietly. It is. Susan's smile widened. Well, don't worry. We'll take care of you. Won't we, David? David's jaw tightened, but he nodded faintly. Susan leaned closer, her voice dropping just slightly. You know, Mary, some things don't change. But some things, they change so much you wouldn't even recognize them anymore. Mary's stomach twisted. There it was again, the edge in Susan's voice, the unspoken warning. Susan stood smoothly, tugging at David's arm. Come on, darling. We have plans tonight. David hesitated, his eyes lingering on Mary for a moment too long before he finally stood. Goodbye, Mary, Susan said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. And just like that, they were gone, leaving Mary alone at the table, her chest aching with old wounds and new ones both. That evening, Mary sat in her father's study again. The letter lay open on the desk. She traced the words with her finger, her mind spinning. Her father's warning. Susan's cryptic remarks. David's silence about his brother. Piece by piece, it all formed a picture, but not a complete one. Not yet. She whispered to herself. What happened, David? What are you hiding from me? The house creaked in the wind, the sea roared in the distance, and Mary knew one thing for certain, the past wasn't finished with her. Not yet. The next day, Mary decided to visit the cemetery. Something pulled her there, though she couldn't say why. The Brown family plot lay near the back, under the shadow of tall pines. She found it easily, polished black stones lined neatly in a row. And there it was. Michael Brown. Beloved son and brother. 1991 to 2012. David's brother. Mary knelt slowly, her fingers brushing the cold stone. Memories flooded her. Michael, David's older brother, always teasing, always charming, always hanging around them. She had never thought much of him back then, but now his absence felt heavy. Her father's letter echoed in her mind. The Browns carry secrets. What had happened to Michael? Footsteps crunched on gravel behind her. She turned quickly. David stood there, hands shoved deep in his pockets, eyes shadowed. Mary rose to her feet. I didn't mean. It's fine, he said quietly. His gaze shifted to the grave. You were going to find it sooner or later. Silence stretched between them. Finally, Mary asked softly, what happened to him? David's jaw tightened. He died. I can see that, she said gently. But how? His eyes flicked to hers, sharp, defensive. Why does it matter now? Because people are whispering, Mary pressed. Because Susan hinted at something. Because my father warned me. David flinched at that. What did he say? Mary hesitated. She couldn't tell him about the letter. Not yet. He didn't trust your family, she said carefully. David's face darkened. Your father hated my father. That's not news. But it's more than that, isn't it? Mary asked, her voice low. What aren't you telling me, David? He stepped closer, his eyes burning into hers. Don't dig into this, Mary. For your own sake. Her pulse raced. Why? What are you afraid I'll find? His hand curled into a fist at his side. For a moment, she thought he might actually tell her. But then his face hardened, shutting down. You left me once, he said coldly. Don't pretend you care now. The words cut deep. Before she could respond, he turned and walked away, leaving her standing at his brother's grave, trembling. Later that night, back at the house, Mary wandered restlessly. Every shadow seemed heavier, every creak of the old wood louder. She found herself in the attic, pulling open boxes of her father's old things. And then she found it. A stack of old belongings wrapped in cloth. At the bottom, an old journal, leather-bound, worn. Her breath caught as she flipped it open. The handwriting wasn't her father's. It was Michael Brown's. The entries were messy, scrawled with intensity. The last few pages chilled her blood. Tomorrow night. I can't hold it in anymore. I have to tell Mary how I feel. She has to know before she and David make it official. It'll destroy him, but I can't live with this lie. Mary's hands shook. Michael had been in love with her. The next page. David suspects. He's been watching me. If he finds out what I'm going to do, I don't know what he'll do. But I can't stop now. Mary pressed a hand to her mouth, her stomach twisting. The last entry was smudged, ink blotched like it had been written in a rush. Tonight's the night. One way or another, it all comes out. And that was the end. The very night he died. Mary's vision swam. Her father had kept this from her for 10 years. Why? She clutched the journal to her chest, her heart pounding, her mind spinning with questions that only grew darker and heavier. The past wasn't just a memory. It was a trap. And she had just stepped back into it. The night after finding Michael's journal, Mary couldn't sleep. She lay awake in her childhood bed, the words etched into her brain. She has to know before she and David make it official. It'll destroy him, but I can't live with this lie. Michael's desperate handwriting replayed in her mind again and again. Her father's warning echoed too. Don't trust the Browns. Trust no one. And David, standing at the grave, shutting her out. Her chest ached with questions, with anger, with longing. By morning, she couldn't take it anymore. She had to see him. She found David near the docks, where the fishermen unloaded their morning catch. He stood with his hands in his pockets, watching the gulls wheel overhead, his shoulders tense. Mary hesitated before approaching. David! He turned sharply, his eyes darkening when he saw her. Mary! For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The smell of salt and fish hung heavy in the air. Finally, Mary blurted, I found something. His brow furrowed. What do you mean? She swallowed. In my father's attic. Michael's journal. His entire body went rigid. What? I read it, Mary said softly. He was going to tell me. About how he felt. The night he died. David's eyes narrowed dangerously. You shouldn't have touched that. David, why was it in my father's attic? Why would he hide it from me? Because he hated my family, David snapped. Because he wanted you away from me. And you listened. Mary flinched. That's not fair. I was 17. He was my father. I trusted him. And you left me. David's voice cracked with rage and grief. His hands curled into fists. Do you have any idea what that did to me? You were my whole life, Mary. One day you were there, and the next, you were gone. No goodbye. No explanation. Nothing. Tears stung her eyes. I didn't want to go. You think I wanted to leave you? Then why? He demanded, stepping closer, his voice raw. Why, Mary? Tell me the truth this time. She opened her mouth, the words trembling on her lips. She wanted to say everything, the letter, her father's warning, her fear. But when she saw the pain in his eyes, something inside her twisted. I can't, she whispered. His face hardened, his jaw clenching. But then, his voice broke. Do you know how many nights I came to this dock, waiting for you? How many times I thought I saw you walking back down the road? I loved you, Mary. I still. He stopped himself, his chest heaving. Mary's breath caught. Her heart pounded. And then she did something reckless. She reached for him. Her fingers brushed his arm, and he didn't pull away. Slowly, she stepped closer, until the space between them vanished. David, she whispered. His hand rose to her cheek, trembling. And then his lips were on hers. The kiss was fierce, desperate, 10 years of longing poured into one moment. Mary clung to him, tears sliding down her face as the world fell away. When they finally pulled apart, breathless, David rested his forehead against hers. "This is wrong," he murmured. Mary shook her head, her voice breaking. "It's the only thing that's ever felt right." But even as she said it, guilt twisted in her stomach. Because David wasn't hers anymore. He belonged to Susan. And the ghost of Michael still stood between them. That evening, Mary sat alone on the porch of her father's house, staring at the sea. The memory of David's lips lingered on hers, filling her with equal parts warmth and dread. Susan's words echoed back to her. "If you knew the truth, you'd never look at him the same." What truth? What had happened the night Michael died? The journal's last entry was like a wound that wouldn't close. "Tonight's the night. One way or another, it all comes out." Mary hugged herself tightly. She couldn't fight it anymore. She had to know, even if it destroyed her. The following day, Mary confronted David again. He was outside his family's garage, working on his truck. Sweat glistened on his forehead, his shirt clinging to his back. "David," she called. He looked up, his expression hard. "Mary, not now." She stepped closer, determination in her voice. "You need to tell me the truth. About Michael. About that night." His jaw tightened. "I told you not to dig into this. And I told you I can't ignore it," she snapped. "You think I don't see it? The way you shut down every time I ask. The way people in town look at you." David's eyes flashed. "What do they say?" Mary swallowed. "They say you covered something up." The wrench in his hand clattered to the ground. His face twisted with fury. "Who told you that?" "Does it matter?" she pressed. "Is it true?" He stepped toward her, his voice low, dangerous. "You don't know what you're asking." "Then make me understand." Mary cried, tears brimming in her eyes. "Please, David, don't shut me out again." For a moment, his face cracked, anguish flashing in his eyes. But then he shook his head violently. "No. You don't need to carry this. Not you." Her heart pounded. "David, if you love me, tell me the truth." The words hung in the air like a blade. His chest rose and fell, his hands trembling. He opened his mouth. And then shut it again, his eyes hardening. "You wouldn't forgive me," he whispered. "Not if you knew." Mary's blood ran cold. "Forgive you for what?" He turned away, grabbing a rag and wiping his hands with trembling fingers. "Go home, Mary." "No," she said firmly, her voice breaking. "Not until you tell me." He spun back to her, his face contorted with rage and grief. "I can't. Don't you get it? I can't tell you, because if I do, you'll never look at me the same way again." Her breath caught, tears spilling over. "David," she whispered. But he grabbed his tools and stormed inside the garage, slamming the door shut. Mary stood frozen, her whole body trembling. He knew something. Something terrible. And he was protecting it, protecting her. Or protecting himself. That night, unable to sit still, Mary went back into her father's study. She searched through every drawer, every box, desperate for another clue. And in the bottom of an old trunk, beneath stacks of newspapers, she found it. A newspaper clipping, dated 10 years ago. "Tragedy strikes Brown family. Michael Brown, 21, found dead near cliffside." The article was short. Few details. Just that Michael had been found at the base of the cliffs late at night. The family declined to comment. Authorities ruled it an accident. But scrawled in her father's handwriting across the edge of the clipping were the words, "Not an accident. Don't trust them." Mary's hands shook violently as she read it over and over. Her father had known. And he had kept it from her. Her pulse raced, her stomach churning. Michael's journal. Her father's warnings. The town's whispers. It all pointed to one truth. Michael hadn't simply died. Something darker had happened that night. And David, whether he admitted it or not, was at the heart of it. Later, as she sat in the darkened living room, the journal clutched in her lap, she heard it. A soft thud outside. Her breath caught. Slowly, she rose and moved to the door. When she opened it, the porch light flickered to life. And there it was. Another envelope. Slipped under her door. Her hands trembled as she picked it up and tore it open. Inside was a single piece of paper. In bold, scrawled handwriting. Ask him what happened the night his brother died. Mary's blood turned to ice. Someone wanted her to dig. Someone wanted her to uncover the truth. But who? And why now, after 10 years? Her heart pounded in her chest as she stared out into the dark street. But there was no one there. Only shadows. And the sense that someone was always watching. Mary barely slept. The anonymous note lay on the nightstand beside her bed, its words seared into her thoughts. Ask him what happened the night his brother died. Her father's warnings echoed too, overlapping with David's broken voice from the day before. You wouldn't forgive me. Not if you knew. Her chest was tight, her mind buzzing with dread. By morning, she had made up her mind. She couldn't keep circling the truth anymore. She had to confront David. She found him at the garage again, sleeves rolled up, grease streaking his hands as he worked on a rusted old car. He looked up when she entered, and his eyes immediately darkened. Mary, not now. But Mary stepped closer, her voice shaking with urgency. I know more than you think, David. I read Michael's journal. His face went pale. The wrench clattered from his hand to the concrete floor. You had no right, he said hoarsely. I had every right. Mary shot back, tears brimming. You kept me in the dark for 10 years. He wrote that he was going to tell me everything, that he was in love with me, and the same night, he died. That's not a coincidence. David's chest heaved. His hands shook as he raked them through his hair. Stop. You don't understand. Then make me understand. Mary cried. For a long moment, David looked like a man drowning. Then he whispered, Michael, he wasn't perfect. He did things that would have destroyed this family. I was trying to protect him. Protect you. Mary's heart hammered. Protect me from what? David's eyes glistened with something close to despair. From the truth. Before Mary could press further, the garage door creaked open. Susan stood there. Her eyes swept over the scene, the tension, the tears, and she smiled faintly. Am I interrupting? David stiffened. Susan. But she cut him off smoothly. Oh, don't stop on my account. I'd hate to get in the way of your little reunion. Mary wiped at her eyes quickly, but Susan's gaze was sharp, too sharp. Susan stepped inside, her heels clicking on the concrete. Funny, Mary. You always had a way of finding your way back to him. Even now. 10 years too late. Mary bristled. I'm not here for him. I'm here for answers. Susan tilted her head, her smile cold. Answers? To what? To Michael, Mary said firmly. To what happened that night. Susan's smile faltered just slightly, and Mary caught it. You know something, Mary pressed. Susan's eyes glittered. And if I do? Then tell me, Mary demanded. Susan let out a soft laugh. Oh, Mary, you think the truth will set you free? No. The truth ruins everything. And believe me, once you know it, you'll never see David the same way again. Mary's stomach twisted. Then why are you with him? Susan's smile returned, sharper now. Because someone has to keep him together. Someone has to make sure the past doesn't come crawling out. You were too weak to stay. I wasn't. Her words cut deep, but Mary stood her ground. You love him. For the first time, Susan's eyes flickered with something unreadable. Love has nothing to do with it. David slammed his fist against the workbench, his voice raw. Stop it, Susan. Susan turned to him, her face calm, almost pitying. Tell her then, David. Tell her what really happened. Or should I? David's face crumpled. Don't. Susan leaned closer to Mary, her voice a whisper laced with venom. Be careful what you wish for, Mary. Some lies keep the world turning. Break them, and everything shatters. She straightened, her heels echoing as she walked out, leaving the silence heavy and suffocating. Mary turned to David, her heart pounding. Is it true? Did you lie to me? David's face was pale, his eyes hollow, and his silence was answer enough. That evening, Mary sat in her father's study again, Michael's journal open on the desk. She flipped through the pages over and over, searching for something she might have missed. Her eyes landed on a line she had skimmed before. If David finds out, it will ruin everything. Her blood ran cold. David had known. And he had been hiding it all this time. Tears blurred her vision as she whispered into the empty room. What did you do, David? The days that followed were a blur. Mary couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Michael's desperate words, her father's warnings, Susan's mocking smile, and David's broken face. And yet, despite everything, despite the fear, the anger, the suspicion, her heart still ached for him. One evening, she found herself walking down the old path by the cliffs. The sun was sinking, painting the sea gold and crimson. It was here she and David used to come, back when they were young and hopeful, back when love was simple. She didn't expect to see him there, but he was. Leaning against the railing, staring out at the horizon, his shoulders heavy. When he heard her footsteps, he turned. His eyes softened, and for a moment, it was as if the years melted away. Mary, he said softly. Her throat tightened. I shouldn't be here. Maybe not, he admitted. But you are. The silence stretched, filled only by the roar of the sea below. Finally, Mary whispered, Why won't you tell me the truth? David closed his eyes. Because once you know, everything changes. And I can't lose you again. Her heart ached. David, you already lost me. His eyes flew open, desperate. No, not yet. Before she could reply, he reached for her, pulling her into his arms. His lips found hers again, and this time she didn't resist. The kiss was slower, deeper, aching with years of pain and longing. When they pulled apart, tears shone in his eyes. I never stopped loving you, he whispered. Not for a single day. Mary's breath caught. Then why are you with Susan? His face twisted. Because she stayed. Because she knows too much. Because I thought you were never coming back. Mary pulled away, trembling. David, this isn't right. She's your fiancée. His voice broke. I don't love her. I never did. She was safety. You were always the fire. Her chest tightened with both joy and despair. This will ruin everything. Then let it, he said fiercely. Let it all burn. I don't care anymore. I just want you. Tears slid down Mary's face as she whispered, And what about Michael? What about the truth? David froze, his face paling. Mary stepped back, her voice shaking. I can't give myself to you while you're still hiding from me. I need to know, David. I need to know what happened that night. He looked at her like a man torn in two. His mouth opened, and a voice cut through the air. Well, isn't this touching? Mary spun around. Susan stood at the edge of the path, arms crossed, her eyes blazing. You, she hissed at David, her voice trembling with fury. I should have known. The moment she came back, you couldn't help yourself. David's face tightened. Susan. But she cut him off, stepping closer, her voice sharp as glass. You think you're in love? You think you can just go back to what you had? Let me tell you something, Mary. Her gaze locked onto Mary's with venom. I've lived with the truth for 10 years. I stayed because I knew he couldn't survive without someone holding him together. And you, she sneered, you ran away. You abandoned him. You don't get to waltz back in and pretend you care. Mary's chest heaved. If you know the truth, then tell me. Susan's lips curved into a cruel smile. You really want to know? Fine. The truth is. Stop! David shouted, his voice raw. He stepped forward, his hands trembling. Enough, Susan. This isn't your secret to tell. Susan's laugh was bitter. And when were you going to tell her? When she's already in too deep again. When she can't walk away. David's face crumpled. I was going to tell her. I just couldn't. Susan's eyes glistened with rage and something like grief. Pathetic. She turned on her heel, her voice sharp as she walked away. Fine. Keep your little romance. But when the truth comes out, and it will, don't come crying to me. Her figure disappeared into the dusk, leaving silence in her wake. Mary turned back to David, her chest aching. David, she whispered, tears brimming. What is she talking about? What are you so afraid to tell me? His eyes met hers, haunted, desperate. And for the first time, Mary wasn't sure she wanted to know. Mary couldn't stop shaking. Susan's words clung to her skin like ice. I've lived with the truth for 10 years. The cliffside wind had howled around them, but it was the silence afterward that unsettled her most. David hadn't denied it. He hadn't chased Susan down. He had just stood there, broken, begging with his eyes for Mary not to push. But Mary couldn't stay blind anymore. The next morning, she forced herself back to the Brown estate, the sprawling house she had avoided for years. Its dark stone walls loomed against the grey sky like a fortress keeping its sins inside. Richard Brown, David's father, opened the door. Time had not softened him. His back was straight, his eyes hard, his voice clipped. Mary Jones. His tone was flat. I wondered when you'd come sniffing around again. Her hands clenched at her sides. I'm not here to fight. I'm here to know the truth. His expression didn't change. Truth is a dangerous thing, girl. You left once because you couldn't stomach it. Do yourself a favor and leave again. I'm not 16 anymore, Mary said firmly. I can handle it. Tell me what happened the night Michael died. Richard's jaw tightened. For a long moment, he just stared at her, his silence pressing like a weight. Then, with a sharp movement, he stepped aside. Come in, then. But don't say I didn't warn you. The study smelled of old leather and cigars, the shelves lined with heavy books no one had touched in years. Richard poured himself a drink, his hands steady as if he'd rehearsed this conversation countless times. He didn't look at her as he spoke. Michael was drunk that night. Drunker than usual. He was out of control, lashing out. He said things about you. About me. About this family. Mary's stomach twisted. What kind of things? Richard's gaze flicked to her at last, sharp and cold. That he was going to take you away. That he'd tell you things I'd buried for decades. He wanted to burn the Brown name to the ground. Mary's heart pounded. So what happened? Richard's mouth tightened. I tried to stop him. Tried to talk sense into him. But he wouldn't listen. We argued. He shoved me. I shoved back. He fell. Hit his head. By the time David found us, it was already too late. Mary staggered back, her hand covering her mouth. You killed him. Richard's voice was like iron. It was an accident. But accidents ruin reputations. I couldn't let the world think Richard Brown murdered his own son in a drunken fight. Tears burned in Mary's eyes. So you let David take the blame. You let him live with it all these years. Richard's jaw was set, his tone calm, almost smug. David was strong enough to bear it. He knew protecting the family came first. He chose silence. That's what loyalty looks like. Mary's voice broke. No, that's cruelty. You stole his life from him. A new voice cracked through the room. She's right. Mary whirled around. David stood in the doorway, his face ashen. His eyes burned as he looked at his father. You ruined me. I thought I killed him. I thought it was my fault for not stopping him, for not saving him. His voice shook. All this time, I carried that weight because you couldn't face the truth. Richard's face didn't waver. You survived. The family name survived. That's all that matters. David's voice rose, raw and broken. No. I mattered. Michael mattered. Mary, his voice cracked on her name. We all mattered, but you only ever cared about appearances. Mary's tears spilled freely as David turned to her, his face twisted with grief. This is why I couldn't tell you. Because the truth wasn't mine alone. It was his. And he'd rather see me broken than see himself fall. Richard set his glass down with deliberate calm. You've had your say. Now get out of my house. Both of you. But David didn't move. His chest heaved, his fists clenched. No. This ends now. He turned to Mary, his voice steady for the first time in years. I'm done protecting him. Done protecting lies. Richard's eyes narrowed, but there was a flicker of something else too, fear. And for the first time, Mary realized the mighty Richard Brown was not unbreakable. They left the Brown estate in silence. The truth sat heavy between them, yet it felt like a release, a poisoned wound finally lanced. David stopped near the cliffs, staring out at the endless sea. His voice was hollow. I wasted 10 years, Mary. 10 years thinking I was a monster. 10 years letting Susan hold me together, when all I wanted was you. Mary swallowed hard. You weren't a monster, David. You were a boy carrying your father's sins. That would have destroyed anyone. He looked at her then, his eyes filled with aching sorrow. If I'd told you back then, would you have stayed? The question gutted her. Her lips trembled as she answered. Yes. I would have stayed. I would have fought for you. But now, she trailed off, tears burning her eyes. Now what? He whispered. Mary's voice cracked. Now it's too late. We're not those people anymore. Too much has happened. We can't go back. David flinched, like her words were knives. But I love you. I always have. She pressed her hand to his cheek, her own tears falling. And I love you. But love doesn't erase 10 years of silence. It doesn't erase Susan. It doesn't erase your father. It doesn't erase the fact that we're broken. His lips trembled. So this is goodbye. Her hand lingered on his face, memorizing him one last time. This is goodbye. She pulled away before she could collapse in his arms again, walking down the path with tears blinding her vision. The days after moved like fog. Mary buried her father's letter and Michael's journal in the fireplace, watching the pages curl into ash. Some truths weren't meant to be carried forever. Susan left town quietly. No note, no farewell. Just gone, as though she'd finally freed herself from the chains of a decade-long half-love. And David. David stayed, but something in him had shifted. He disowned Richard publicly, selling off the family estate. The town whispered, but he didn't care. For the first time, he lived as his own man, not his father's shadow. Mary left too. Not in fear this time, but in peace. She packed her bags and drove away, watching the town shrink in her rearview mirror. Her heart ached, but it was a clean ache, not the poisoned wound it had been. She knew she loved David. She knew he loved her. But some loves belong to another time. On her last night in town, she walked the cliffs one final time. The sea roared below, endless and eternal. She whispered into the wind, "Goodbye, David. Goodbye to us." And for the first time in 10 years, she felt free. 10 years of silence. 10 years of love buried under secrets. And in the end, sometimes love comes too late. If this story touched your heart, make sure to like this video and share it with someone who loves deep, emotional tales. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories filled with heartbreak, secrets, and the kind of love that stays with you long after the credits roll. And tell me in the comments, if you were Mary, could you forgive, or would you walk away?